gets open for three. Dagger!
Everybody, welcome back to Well Beyond the Arc. I'm Jay. That is Montana, and I am filling in today for Manoli, who is out of town for work, but we'll make it through it. How you doing today, Montana?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me all right? I'm just now catching up. I'm just now catching in. I was frozen until just now. Am I coming through all right?
Yes.
All right, perfect. No, man, I'm good. I'm just chilling, enjoying the first week off of my job, finally off after being working since August. So I'm enjoying my first week off of that job and just kind of relaxing and definitely watching those NBA finals because it appears we might have ourselves a series.
Yeah, I was a little shocked by the outcome of the game because I sure thought for a minute there that the Nuggets were going to go up 2-0. But I got to start it with this. So that I'm sure you heard the question asked to Cole Spoelstra about the Joker, if you should make him a scorer instead of a passer. I know he said that to untrained eye, but man, game one, he quietly had 27 points and a scorer. And then in game two, he had 41, and there was a whole different outcome.
I mean, I will say this. I think I will agree that there's some truth to that. It's also, you have to look at the other players. Aaron Gordon didn't play as good in game two. Michael Porter Jr. didn't play as good. Yeah, Jokic didn't have as good numbers, but it's also these other players that he was dishing the ball to that weren't productive. And it was also a productivity issue that wasn't just there. So I will say that there's a level of truth there because we even saw that. Now, they didn't lose any games against the Lakers, but in the games where, Jokic put up some bigger points, the games were a little bit closer. So I will say there's some truth. I think that he's best when he is that pass first center. And I think that is who he really is. I think we've seen that in his game. He is more of a pass first type of guy. So I think there's some truth to that for sure. But when we look at the other players, the reason the Nuggets lost game two is because
if you just look at the stats from game one.
Yeah.
The difference between game one and game two.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say for sure that there's a big level of difference in how the entire team played, honestly. I just don't think that the Nuggets really showed up. Now, they only lost by 3 points. They didn't get blown out. It wasn't a 10-plus loss, but and they were in the whole game. It looked like they were going to win it. But what I will say is they just didn't play as good of basketball as they did in game one. And it goes beyond Jokic. I will say there is a difference when he's dishing the ball more than he's scoring, but Murray didn't play quite as good. The whole team, top to bottom, KCP didn't play very good. I don't think the Nuggets as a team came out game two and played that good of basketball.
Yeah, because in game one, their guards were very aggressive. A lot of post game being put up. And it seems like, I don't know if Jokic gets enough credit for being maybe the most fundamental big man since Tim Duncan.
No, that's a great take. I definitely agree. That is his game because he's not Mr. Flashy. He's not Mr. Super dominant. I mean, he is a dominant player in his own right, but when you think of dominant centers, you don't really think of him. You don't think of that type of. He's not an AD type of player with that skill set, but he's very fundamental, and he is the best passing big man we've seen ever and might be ever, honestly, when it's all said. And he has plenty more. I mean, he's just entering his prime. His skill set with how good he's been able to move the ball has always been there, but we've seen him fine-tune that, and we've seen him fine-tune his other stats with it. So I just think that Jokic has gotten better and better and better. But when we do see games like game two, even if he puts up 40-plus points, if he's not doing his strongest, suit, which is passing, if he's not going into his strongest suit, they're not going to win the game. And another thing goes with the productivity of the other players. Like you said, the guards weren't as productive. Michael Porter Jr. wasn't as productive. They just did not look as productive. And I think the biggest question is it they weren't as productive, or were the Miami Heat just more on point? We saw Jimmy Butler come alive more. Bam Adebayo, he played great in game one. He continued that level of play in game two. Gabe Vincent absolutely made up for game one and came back. Max Strus had a better game. Kyle Lowry, their team came back and just played better basketball. So at the end of the day, part of me is like, yeah, the Nuggets just didn't finish. They didn't play quite as consistent. But the Heat took advantage of that like they do against every team they play. And if you are not on point, they will take advantage of that. And even if they only beat you by 3, they will find a way to beat you. And that's what we saw. So the Miami Heat showed up in game 2, and the Denver Nuggets just didn't.
And the Heat, I think they had a plan because they didn't use Lowry all season a ton, but now you see him more in the playoffs. I think they were keeping him healthy and ready for the playoff run, but that was pretty ballsy because they barely made the playoffs. They had to play the play-in games.
Yeah, they were a team that, I mean, they very much didn't come alive until really the end. Like, they stayed in it the whole season. They weren't a team like the Lakers that barely made it, or a team like the Mavs that made it to the top and then dropped all the way down. They were just pretty consistent in that spot. They didn't really rise or fall. They stayed pretty much in the area where they were potentially going to get in, but we weren't for sure. And then now they're here and they're taking advantage of that. They're playing great playoff ball. They look like a great team. Game 2, I will say, like, they look like the team out of the East that deserved to be here. Game 1, it wasn't a blowout, but it wasn't an awful game. But game 1, I was like, you know what? Maybe the Celtics could have handled this Denver team better. But game 2, the Heat, they didn't leave any doubts out there. They are the Eastern Conference team that belongs here and that deserves to be here. And they're going to make it a series. Now, if we're talking how far the series is going to go, because I'm sure that's going to be a question that's going to be asked today, I still don't have the Heat winning it. As great as they played in game 2, I've said this in my other show, the Connor and Heffernan Show. I've said this on here. The Denver Nuggets are the best team in basketball, both conferences by far this season. I still have the Nuggets winning in 6, if I'm being honest. I mean, but for you, do you see this game 2 shifting the momentum? Do you think the Miami Heat can build up on this game 2, or do you think Nuggets will still be the team when it's all said and done? Because I've still got Nuggets in 6, if I'm being honest.
Well, what's most impressive to me, have you been to Denver?
I have, yeah. I've been to. That's the main place I've gone to Lakers games is Denver.
Okay.
Denver versus Lakers.
So without even being an athlete, the way you're breathing fucking changes in Denver. And Miami is like 13 feet above sea level or something like that. Seriously. And the fact that they went up there and beat them at home, that's impressive because not only are you playing against a great team, you're playing against a mile-high stadium.
No, that is true. I mean, they're showing up and they easily could be down 0-2 right now, especially after how game 1 went. Mazzoli's suspended again. Yeah, he is. Man, he keeps getting those suspensions. He can't stop getting those. But no,
that's because
I will
Scott
say,
Foster was repping. Oh, no.
Yeah, so
I was
for real,
picking up
though.
for Manoli.
But no, yeah, it is impressive. The fact that there's at least alive right now is just impressive because, like I said, I thought they were going to be 0-2, especially back-to-back games, and I thought they were going to be down, but they found a way to come back, and I don't see that momentum leaving. I still don't think they'll win, but I do have them winning another game. I definitely have them winning another game in this series because I just think that that's who this Miami Heat team is, and Jimmy Butler. He only scored, I think it was like 8 more points than last game, but the way he played the game was a lot better. And that was how it was for the whole team. The team as a whole, they just showed up and they definitely seem like they're ready for game 3.
Yeah, and I think Bam was more important to the win than Jimmy just because as a big man, that dude, his bank shot like Tim Duncan, and it looks effortless when he just puts up a little mid-range jump shot and it goes in and he's walking away before that thing even reaches the basket. But I think they'll probably split in Miami is how I feel about it. Because if there is an energy boost, if there is a momentum, it'll be in the next game, right? And then if you're Denver, you got to get your shit back together, win that game to go home. But it wouldn't shock me if Denver came out and just won the next 2 games either.
See, that's the thing. They're a team to me that this loss, well, I'm not going to call it a fluke. We've seen this before. We've seen the underdog or the team that is viewed as the team that's way below. We've seen them maybe get one in. We've seen them get that one game win, that one shot, but then that's usually it. And I can see that being it for this Miami team. But I can also see them continuing the momentum and keeping it alive to 6 games. But I just cannot see I can't see a game 7, and I can't see the Heat walking away with it. I would be shocked. I mean, it would be something that I wouldn't believe until it happens, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think for it, so I think for the Heat to win, everything has to go their way. And I don't think that's the same for the Nuggets. I think the Nuggets could have more adversity and battle through it, where I think everything has to line up for the Heat for them to beat this Nuggets team. And I don't know what you do with Joker either, because you almost lost game 2 with Joker putting up 41, and you did lose when he put up 27. I don't know and that was the most quiet 27, because somewhere in the middle of the first half that he hadn't even taken a fucking shot yet.
No, I mean, I will say this. Jokic, like you said, back to the comments that were interesting about, that first game with how he scored less, but we saw maybe more of his other attributes shine. I think that Jokic is the one player, regardless of if you look at him as a better player when he's passing it or shooting it, however you look at it, he is a player that you can't stop. All you can do is slow him down, whether that be his passing or his scoring or any. You're not going to stop him. He'll find a way. He's one of those players, a special player that will find a way to win. I will say the Miami Heat have done a decent job, even though he scored 41 and had a big game. They still did a good job of slowing him down when it mattered and cutting him off when it mattered and being maybe a little more vigilant overall in his game and of his game. And I just think it translated really well. So even though he still dropped 41, I do think that the Heat found a way to shut him down a little bit, or at least slow him down. And they need to continue that into the next game, because he's the piece here. He's that one key factor here for that Nuggets team, because that's the player that the Heat have no one for him. So the Denver Nuggets need to utilize that, no matter what that means. And in the same breath, the Miami Heat need to try to slow him, because if he comes out and has a monster triple-double performance where he's scoring 30 plus, 10 plus rebounds, 10 plus assists, if he comes out and has a game like that next game, and the Heat don't have any players that have anything to answer for that, we're looking at a dangerous series, and we're looking at the Nuggets catching fire, and then that's it.
Eric Gordon balled the fuck out in the first half of that first game. He was posting up. He was using his body. He was getting up in the face of when he was playing defense. They need that again from him too, because he sparked a fire in that team in game 1 that, like, he got that whole role going.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I agree. I think that there's key pieces here. And honestly, the veteran players on both the Nuggets and the Heat are actually kind of the keys to this series. We've got players like, DeAndre Jordan out here with the Nuggets. He's not getting that much time or any time on the court, but we get these veteran voices are so important in the locker room. And there's a very noticeable relationship between DeAndre Jordan and Jokic. And I can only imagine that he's been around the league, and I'm sure that he's helped Jokic. Now, obviously, Jokic, DeAndre Jordan, we know who the better center is, and it's not even close. But I feel like the vets on both teams I don't think we're overlooking that. We look at the Miami Heat, Kevin Love. That is a player that I think sometimes people forget he's even playing for the Heat, and it's easy to see that because he's not really getting any time. You know what I think they need to do? They need to play Kevin Love. Kevin Love needs more time. Kevin Love needs to have a bigger role on this team, because is he going to stop Jokic? No, but can you utilize him to help maybe slow him down, or at least utilize him and utilize what he offers? Because if anything, if not his playing, this guy's been to the finals more times than a lot of the players on either team. This guy has been to the finals And by the way, he's won a championship. So Kevin Love, I think, needs to be utilized a little bit more. But his veteran presence and his leadership, even just that, Eric Gordon. I mean, the vets on both sides. We've got some pretty good, big name vets that are helping juice these teams up on both ends. So I just think it's an interesting finals. I know that some people were like, oh, the Lakers are out, the Celtics are out. None of the exciting teams are in. I think this is the opposite. I think this is one of the best, most exciting finals that we've seen, and I think it's going to go close to all the distance.
I think it's a good thing because people finally get eyes on Joker, and I don't think enough people understand how good of a player this guy is. I just don't. And I am one of those guys who forgot that Love was on the Heat.
Well, you wouldn't. How are you going to know? He's not really playing. I think he scored like 6 points. He played. I mean, I think he did. They did give him a little more time on the court last game. I think he had 20 minutes. No, that might. Yeah. He did have 20 minutes in game two. So maybe they are trying to utilize him more now. But I just think that you need to utilize your vets. You need to utilize what's working for you. And the biggest thing the Miami Heat need, they need two of their players to come out extremely strong. One of them is obvious. It's Jimmy Butler. When Jimmy Butler balls out, usually they win. He's one of those players. And I'm not comparing him to Michael Jordan. Some people, there's a rumor that he's Michael Jordan's abandoned son and all this stuff, but I'm not comparing him to Jordan. But what I will say is he has something very similar to Jordan in the sense that when he balls out and when he puts his head down and goes, the team usually wins. Jimmy Butler is the same way. We can't say the same for a player like LeBron or Kevin Durant. We've seen them ball out and their teams fall short. When Jimmy Butler balls out, his teams usually win. If Jimmy Butler can add on to his performance he had last game, he had a 20-plus point performance, pretty good performance on other stat lines. If he can improve and get those points up to 25 to 30 and improve his other stats a little bit more, especially defensively, if he can come out and play like that, that's one player they need for game three. The second is Bam. Bam Adebayo, he's really impressed me these playoffs because imagine having to go up against a center that a lot of people are saying might end up in their top 5 all time after this season or top 10. That is a huge response. And he is going head to head, doing his best. And it's not going incredibly well, but it could be going a lot worse. And I think that his on the other side of the ball, his not looking at him guarding Joker, but looking at his offense, Bam has been one of the most efficient players in these finals for the Heat offensively so far. He's been the only player on the Heat team that scored 20 plus in both games, if I'm not mistaken. So he has been that offensive piece for the Heat. They need those two guys to come out in game three and have a monstrous performance. And if they can do that, maybe they pull it off. But I think it's going to be the flip side. I think Joker and the Nuggets are going to come out for some revenge, and they're going to punish this Heat team.
I'm still sticking with Nuggets in 5. I just don't feel as confident.
I'm with you, man. I only got one game above that. I've got 6 just because I do think now that the Heat have gotten that first one, I do think there's a slight chance they could get the next one. The next one is their best chance of winning another one. If anything, they can maybe string 2 in a row. But I don't see it, man. I'll be shocked if the Heat can somehow pull it off. I will be shocked because this Nuggets team, they might have one night off. But because of how deep they are, I don't think they have another night off. I don't think they have another game off in this series. And even that wasn't, I mean, they lost by 3 points. We're talking about a game off, and Joker had 41 points, and they lost by 3. That's a pretty damn good game off. But what I will say is, the rest of the team has to show up. If we're talking about the Nuggets' keys to coming back next game, the rest of the team has to show up because Joker, whether he's better passing or shooting, he's going to show up. You guys, you need Michael Porter Jr. to show up. You need Aaron Gordon to show up. These are the players that showed up in game 1 and made the difference. So you need these guys to show up. And if KCP shows up, and if their core key players besides their stars show up, I've got the Nuggets pulling away and just closing the series out. Maybe it's 5, but I still think maybe the Heat can make it a 6-game series. But I'll be shocked if we're talking about a 7-game series. I just think that there's no way the Heat can last that long. I don't think they have the legs to close it out like that.
I agree with you, and I remember a comment a couple shows ago. I don't remember who put it, but it was at some point the undrafted guys are going to turn back into undrafted guys.
Yep. No. Yeah. Seriously though, and we already saw some of their lower end players in game one, start to turn back and look like the players that we remember them be, not the players they were a couple of games in the playoffs. So I honestly, I can see that as well. And Tyler Hero still not in. Now, Tyler Hero is a tricky one for me because he came out his rookie season and he had a pretty solid rookie year and he looked like a really solid player. I think they were in the finals his rookie season, but his next season, he didn't quite look the same. I'm not super impressed, but I will say he absolutely adds depth to that guard position, and the Heat need that. As well as those players have been playing in the playoffs, they need the players. They need the Oladipos, who he's definitely not coming back, but they need the Oladipos. They need the Heroes, and they're out. So if Tyler Hero can come back, which I think that I think he's coming back. I think he's ready. I think they're waiting for them to be back in Miami. I do think that Tyler Hero will make his return in Miami. And if he comes back, if he can play like the Tyler Hero that improved his game a lot from year 2 to 3, or the Tyler Hero, his rookie, if he can play like that, then that does add a dangerous piece to the Heat that they're lacking. But I don't think it'll be enough. By the time they get him back, I think they'll have him back by game 4. By the time you have him back, I think they'll be looking at being down 2-1. And I just don't think they can come back. I think coming down 0-1, any team can do that. That's been done plenty of times. But once it keeps stacking, especially against the team with the best depth, I just don't think the Heat can do it. But talk about a team that's been so close the last few years. We have not talked enough about how the Miami Heat are one of the best Eastern Conference teams because they've been in the finals 2 times in the last 4 years. And teams like the Celtics definitely can't say that. The 76ers can't say that. The Heat have been that team. So shout out to the Heat regardless of staying relevant.
No, I can't disagree with anything you said. But we can do a little moving on to maybe everybody's favorite game show because I'm a little excited for the game this week. For all of you who watch the show, you already know how it works. If this is your first time, we are playing NBA player or. I will come up with 5 names, and Montana will have to guess if they are an NBA player or somebody from a different profession. Now, if Montana gets the answer correct, you will hear this sound. If Montana gets it wrong, Michael Jordan's going to let him know. So, Montana, you're an NFL fan, right?
I am, yep.
Are you like me? Are you a draft nerd?
Not so much. I am in certain drafts, but not year after year.
Well, this is NBA player or 2023 undrafted NFL rookie free agents.
Okay, I might do all right. I also might do terribly. I don't know. I will admittedly, I did not pay. I mean, they're undrafted anyway, but I didn't pay attention as much attention this season. So I don't know. We'll see, man. Last time I think when you were on that side of things, I think I got a 4 out of 5.
You
so
did, and I
thought
I was gonna lay you down.
This might be the one that does it, man. It might be the opposite. Maybe this is the one that does it because I think I could do okay, but I don't know. Let's see it. Let's get into it.
All right. Well, the first name is Kendall Brooks.
NFL.
Victory! All right. So Kendall Brooks is a safety undrafted from Michigan State, signed by the Cardinals.
Not a bad start. Here we go. All right.
All right. Name number 2, Jack White.
Fuck. Like the most. This is like a man. This is like a name you get on a scam phone call. They tell you their name is Jack. I don't even have any idea which. I'm gonna go with NFL.
So Jack White plays for the Nuggets. He was drafted in 2022 played for Duke and played a year over for the Melbourne United. He averages 1.2 points per game, 1 rebound, and 0.2 assists.
Never heard of him. This is the first time I've heard of him. So
And,
there we go.
and this guy might win a ring this year.
He could. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's going to be his claim to fame.
All right. Player 3 is Brian Walker.
Ooh, shoot. I'm going to stick with NFL.
Victory!
All right, Brian Walker, cornerback, Shepherd University, signed by the Ravens. I had never heard of Shepherd University until today.
That makes two of us.
Well, you're not doing too bad. You only got the one wrong so far. Let's see if we can keep your roll going here. Maybe you can go four for 4 out of 5 2 times in a row.
That'd
The
be
next
awesome.
name, Adam Plant.
Adam Plant. Oh man, these are tough names. That's the hardest part is the names. This is what's getting me the most. I usually don't have this much trouble with the names. I'm gonna go to NBA.
Adam Plant, defensive end, UNLV, signed by the Las Vegas Raiders.
See, I didn't even know that. I'm a Raiders fan. I think I even have the hat on. I didn't know that, but shoot.
That's why I went with a Raiders guy, but I didn't know if you would know it. I was like, can I get him on his own team?
No, yeah, you did. I don't know all those players, especially not if it's an undrafted.
All right. Well, let's see. Will you win? Will you leave this on a winning note or a losing note? We're 2 for 2 with Peyton Watson.
NBA.
Victory!
Yeah.
Peyton Watson, drafted by Oklahoma City in the first round, traded to the Denver Nuggets, another Nugget, averages 3.3 points per game, 1.6 rebounds, and 0.5% assists.
Superstar. Well, hey, there we go. At least I didn't finish with a losing record on this one, but that was not quite as good as the last one. I don't get it. Manoli gets on and like I think he's gotten 1 3 for 5. Other than that though, he had a 5 for 5 and a 4 for. He gets them. I don't get it like that. I guess he's cheating. He's looking the answers up. He's looking the answers up when he does it.
He's cheating. I like it. All right. Well, when we were talking about what we were going to talk about on the show today, when you sent this one over, I was excited because I was reading a lot about this earlier today. Kyrie gives LeBron a call and says, "What's up, my guy? I want to play together, but I don't want to come to LA. I want you to come to Dallas." What were your first thoughts when you heard that?
I mean, first of all, I thought I read it the wrong way. I was like, wait a second, Kyrie is recruiting LeBron. I thought I was having a stroke. I was like, this cannot say. I thought it was the other way around. I was like, if anything, it's LeBron recruiting Kyrie to LA, but no, it is. So here's what I will say first and foremost. The idea that was presented by Kyrie was a big 3 with Luka, LeBron, and Kyrie, but there is an excuse me. Whoa. Whoa. Excuse me 1 second. Oh. Getting over being a little sick, but there's no way that they would keep Luka, Kyrie, and LeBron on the same team. I just don't think that's realistic on on a money standpoint, on a trade standpoint. And then talk about 3 ball dominant players on the same. You don't even want that. If there's any level of truth, which there isn't, you don't want 3 ball dominant players on the team on the court at the same time. It didn't work with 2 with Luka and with Kyrie. Adding LeBron would be a nightmare. So I don't think there's any level of truth to it. I don't even know, if I'm being honest, I don't even know if I believe that Kyrie really is like truly pursuing that and recruiting him like that. He went on his live like a week ago, and I don't know why I was on his live. I never hop on Instagram lives, but I was on his live for like a minute, and he was talking about how he's not going to announce, there's going to be no news that comes about his where he's going to go until he makes his decision. So to me, that this, as much as like, yeah, there probably is some level of truth to there being a rumor, I don't even think I don't think he's gonna stay with Dallas. So at the end of the day, I think this is just Maverick fans somehow getting excited and thinking this is true, and I think everyone else is just shooting this down as ridiculous and not, because I don't think there's any level where this happens, because there's no one the Lakers will want from that team except maybe Luka and Kyrie, and if we're doing the swap, it's not going to happen. So I don't think anyone is actually truly involved in this, and I don't think it's going to happen. I just think it's a load of rumors, early off-season rumors. That's all it is.
I don't think it'll happen either, but I want it to happen.
Man, why?
Just because it would be crazy, and I'm a big Mark Cuban fan, so let's see what happens. Like,
man, I guess for me, if LeBron wasn't a Laker, if he was on any other team, I would actually probably be with you. I would be, because it would be a really interesting formula to see. I've always, ever since Luka entered the league, LeBron is a player that I've always been like, that'd be really cool to see them play together. And LeBron has also mentioned on one of his many interviews and podcasts that Luka is a player that he would like to play with. So there's levels that like, you can see where there's levels where people would be like, oh, this is a possibility. I don't think there's any truth to it. I still think that Kyrie could end up a Sun and link up with KD, or I think he could end up a Laker, or I think he could end up a Buck, like we've talked about before. So I think that this is all smoke and mirrors. I don't even think that Kyrie is going to remain a Maverick. There's been no official word from him, which you know how this goes. It's always like that. It's rarely the actual athlete themselves coming out and saying, I want to go here, I'm recruiting. That's not how this goes. But I don't think that if there's any level of truth to it, I think it's going to fade quickly. And I think LeBron stays a Laker. Kyrie does not stay a Mav. I don't think that. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's crazy. I think that when I sit here and I think about the makeup of that, it's like I don't think it would work. It's like they'd have 3 point guards on the court at all time, essentially, if they play these three guys together. And I don't know any NBA team that would work, especially now with three guys playing guard and needing to have the ball in their hands. So yeah, in an alternative universe, I don't even think it works. Even if they get together, I'm giving them a 6 seed at best. That's what I'm giving this team of Luka, Kyrie, and LeBron. I'm predicting 6 seed, second round bounce. They're not that special.
the only reason I think this, I think Kyrie stays a Mav only because the max contract. Unless he can convince them to sign and trade with somebody, then I get that. Then he still gets that money and the Mavs get something back for him. But like, if you're the team who's trading for him, why the fuck would you trade for him if you don't have to?
True. No, and that is a good point. I will say the max is a big deal. Kyrie's made it clear that I don't think he's so much in it for the game of basketball itself. Like
tell me if I'm wrong, but can't he, like, so let's say he goes to the Lakers just for sake of argument. Can't he sign a 1-year deal and then get maxed after that again?
I believe so. I believe that he has more freedom than just doing. I think he can still get paid even if he goes
huge 1-year deal, but now you're eligible for that super max again.
No, he can get paid either way. And so even if he is about the money, which I think he's more about the money than winning another chip, I really don't think he is a player that's that focused on it. Like, I think he'd love to win another one, but I don't think that's what drives him. It just doesn't seem like that's the case. So I absolutely think that he can get paid either way. I don't think he should stay a Mav. I really don't. I don't think the Mavericks are really the right spot for him. So I think he goes Suns, Lakers, or Bucks. And then I guess maybe I can see him staying a Mav, maybe, but that's like my last thing I see for him.
I don't know if people have seen this, but if you haven't, take your ass after the show, obviously. Go Google or go YouTube Mavs playing. and see what Mark Cuban gives them for travel. They have a bar on there. They have beds on there. They have that's the only thing I could see. If you're not about winning, you ain't gonna get much better comfort than you are with Mark Cuban.
And that's also a good point because he is known for that, and he's known for taking care of his team, and honestly I like that. He's one of the better people in the business with that, and I respect that. And my biggest thing is I wouldn't hate seeing Kyrie stay a Mav. I'm not a Mavs fan. I know a couple Mavs fans, and from what they told me, it doesn't seem like a lot of Mavs fans are on board. And so when a fan base doesn't seem super on board, it just doesn't seem like a great idea to make that your guy. And I think Luka is their guy. If anything, they just need to surround Luka with better role players, better pieces. Let Luka be that guy. Yeah, I don't think the formula works. And but the money and the being a part of like a team with good ownership and a good person in charge, and like the Nets definitely don't seem to be that. So I think that Kyrie could also take other factors into account that aren't championship. I don't think that's the forefront. So that's a great point. I think he could look at being a part of an organization with good people up top, good amenities, all that. I do think that maybe he does stay a Mav because of that.
And before we move on to a crazy contract, the last thing I'll just say is I don't always agree with Cuban, but more owners need to speak up in their sport and when they think this league is screwing up. And that's one of the things I like about Cuban. But talking about screwing something up, and I think the Pistons fucked up, but why would Monty Williams stay there for that? Well, look at the contract he got. Why would, because a guy who didn't want to coach this year got the biggest contract in NBA history to coach a shitty team.
Well, here's what I'll say. He already took over a really bad team and turned it into a team that went to the finals and has been in the playoffs consistently. And they weren't that team before Monty. So what I will say is when I first saw this, I was with you. I was like, this is ridiculous. This doesn't make sense for either this doesn't make sense for either parties at all, in my personal opinion. But at the end of the day, he is a guy that can make it happen. What I will say is he definitely took over a better team in the Suns. They had better pieces than the Pistons have. The Pistons do not have the Devin Bookers. They don't have those pieces that the Suns already had for Monty Williams. But what I will say is I do think that if anyone can take a team like the Pistons and at least turn them into a 7th or 8th seed, at least get them in a play-in and turn the team around, I do think it is Monty Williams. Do I think that the size of the contract, the number of years, I don't know about that, but I do think that he is the guy that can get it done. And I think the Pistons are investing long term, and they haven't really done that. They haven't invested long term in a minute in either a player or a coach. So I do think it's a potential turning point, but I don't know. I'm not convinced, but I do think it makes a little more sense because of what he did for the Suns.
Well, no, I get that, but this is where it doesn't make sense for me. So, like for the Pistons, it makes 100% sense to like get a guy who can turn your franchise around. Coaches, and if you got big money and you don't care, like coaches don't go against the salary cap. You can fire that guy and just pay him out later on. If you got that kind of money, cool. What I don't understand is he didn't want to coach. So if he's all in, how do you feel he's all in giving him that kind of contract? That's where I get. And for him, you'd be dumb to turn down that type of contract. So is he there just for the money, or is he there because he wants to coach? And that's where for the Pistons, I was like, all of it made sense until I had to overpay you to coach because you didn't want to coach this year.
Well, and that's a really good point. And I think for me, the reason I look beyond that is I think that there's a pretty big level where, and I'm not going to sit here. We've talked about Kevin Durant on this. I know, right? We're getting to Kevin Durant somehow with all this. But what I will say is this: as much as we've talked about Kevin Durant on this show, we had an entire special about when he requested a trade. So we've definitely covered some KD on this show. But what I will say is this: I feel like there's a certain level of pressure and stress that is put on you when you coach a player like KD, because there might be a certain reputation with teams, with leadership, this and that. And I think that there's a certain level where I wouldn't I don't know. I think that Williams, I think that picking KD up was good for the Suns, but it wasn't great for Monty Williams and his time with the Suns. And I don't, when KD doesn't like you, you're out as a coach, as a player. If KD doesn't like you, if you don't gel, you're out. And I think that's more what it was than anything else. I think that this internal decision to move on from Williams had more to do with KD and who he wants and what he wants going forward. Now, Frank Vogel, maybe that isn't the case, because I have a hard time believing that KD was like, Frank Vogel's my guy. But I do think that there may have been a certain level of internal turmoil going on that maybe made Monty Williams want to step away, that had nothing to do with just not wanting to coach. So the only reason I'm looking beyond that side of it is because Kevin Durant comes to the team. The team has some internal issues before. I just feel like there's those factors to take into account with what he said about not coaching, looking beyond just, you know, being out, being off the Suns, being fired. I think there's more to it than just that.
Do you think Frank Vogel's a good hire? Because I do. I think he's a hell of a coach.
I think he's a great coach, but I think he's a great coach for the young, hungry team like the Hornets. Or we saw him take over with the Pacers. He came out and took that young Paul George and took that team and really turned the corner. And with the Lakers, it wasn't so much a young, hungry team, but I think that those are the teams he flourishes with. So I think it's not a bad hiring. He's a championship winning coach. He's a great defensive mind. He knows how to handle stars. He's already coached several stars, but I also he's not the greatest with lineups. We saw him struggle to make the right lineups as a Lakers coach. We saw him struggle to keep what was good about his coaching, which was his defense. We saw him struggle to keep that afloat with all the turmoil. When all the turmoil went on within the organization, everything that Frank Vogel did right just flopped. And with Kevin Durant, with even Ayton, we see these players within the Suns organization that you could call toxic, you could call problems, and I just don't think Vogel can handle that, especially if it's a star player like him. So I think it's a good hiring, but I don't think it's a great hiring, and I don't think it's the best fit for either parties. But I do think they can make it work.
A Chris Paul type hire.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a good point. I think that's a really good point. And I think that they definitely can make it work. And I do think he could help them, especially defensively, and maybe he can help sharpen them a little bit as a team. But because of the downsides and the problems I saw with him as a Lakers coach, I do see some issues with his lineups, with the internal side of the organization. And like I just said, I think Kevin Durant brings a certain level of toxicness and a certain level of attention that you don't really want. And I just don't know if Vogel is going to be that guy to lead the helm and deter that from the team. So I don't know. It's going to take the season starting and us being 30, 40 games in for me to say, is Vogel the guy or not? But maybe he comes in and they win the first, 15 of their 20, and they look like a team that's going to make a push to the Western. They could be that too. I just don't know for sure because of the downsides I saw of him as a Lakers coach.
You feel like KD would have had to sign off, though, right? Like you feel like,
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I think he's one of the reasons that Williams is gone. I think he signed off on them moving on from Williams and moving their organization forward. So he absolutely signed on, and I think the reason he signed on is solely because in Frank Vogel's accolades, there's a championship, there's a ring. That attracts Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant loves that. He loves the way that looks. He wants more of those. So I think that if anything, he looked very solely at his championship experience, but then also as a defensive coach, Vogel is one of the better coaches in the last 10 years defensively in the league. So Vogel took the Lakers and made them the number one defense in the league. So and he's done that with other teams, and he's made, a young, hungry Pacers team playoff hopeful and playoff, showing up in the playoffs. So I do think he's a good coach, and I do think KD signed off, but it's going to take next season. It's going to take the actual season starting up for me to be on board with it being a good hire.
Well, as we're talking about coaches, I've actually said this in the comments before. Doc Rivers, overrated?
100%.
I agree.
I think he's the most overrated coach in NBA history. I think he is, because this is what I'll say. The name Doc Rivers carries way too much for a guy. We just got done talking about Frank Vogel. They have the same amount of championships they've won as a coach.
Well, and here's the thing. If you ask me, what do you think of Doc Rivers? I'd be like, he's all right.
Yeah, he's a very mid-tier NBA coach. That's what he's always been. The one time he wasn't a middle of the pack coach is when he had, Kevin Garnett. It was the group of guys he had. It wasn't his coaching. We have seen championships because of that. That's an example.
He's had so much talent and doesn't have as many rings as he should to show for it, right? Like, isn't that kind of a thing too, no matter where he's been? Like, at one point, he was supposed to lead the Clippers to greatness. Like,
couldn't do it. And he had the pieces. Now, again, the Clippers, we had the injury bug that hit them every playoffs. We had all that stuff, but still, he cannot get it done. Especially if this is what I will say. The thing that makes Doc Rivers one of the most overrated coaches is he is nothing without his stars. When his stars go down, because he's always had at least 1 or 2 star players on his roster that he's coached, when they go down, he cannot lead a group of role players to wins. He can, especially in the playoffs. When he has his stars on the court, he can make it work. He can write something up. He can give them the touches. He can give them what they need. When they are off, he is an abysmal coach. He needs his star players. The best coaches, the coaches we should be talking about as the best of the best, can win games without their stars. And Doc Rivers cannot consistently do that.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. He's one of the more overrated coaches, and we probably don't need to beat up Doc all night long. So, because there is one other thing before we get to the end of this show that we wanted to talk about. The Spurs with the #1 overall pick. Everybody knows they're going to pick the alien. Does he help them become a dynasty again?
It's their best chance since they had Tim Duncan. Since the Duncan days, it's their best chance. Do I think it's a surefire done deal? I don't think it is, because as great as he is, I'm going to throw some names out there that we have said are going to be the next LeBron James, the player that is a once-in-a-lifetime player. People said that about Zion. Not so much. Not so much. Definitely not so much. There are players that are predicted to be better than they are, even if they have the highlights to prove it before. If anyone is a highlight monster before the NBA, it's Zion. He had highlights since high school. So you can have all the highlights, you can have all of that, but until you step on the NBA court and you can prove that you can stay healthy, stay physical, stay ready, then you can't say anything. There's no surefire just because of the talent he possesses before. But this guy is their best chance to build that up, because his skill set, if it translates to the NBA, teams are going to have a hard time stopping him. So
I've only seen highlights of the guy. Okay. Like, I get it. And you can make almost any decent player look good with highlights. I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but he's from France. I forget what league he even plays in. Like, I don't get to watch him because, I'm not watching other leagues of basketball. If he's as good as they say he is, then he's the next great thing coming into the NBA, and it's a hell of a start. But I'm older, but I remember Sam Bowie. I remember Greg Oden. I remember these names that were supposed to be the greatest thing coming into the NBA, and they didn't pan out. You know what I mean? And I said it jokingly, but when Zion was being drafted, I said, as long as he doesn't turn into Sean Kemp and eat himself out of the league, he'll be fine.
Well, he predicted that one.
I was just joking because he's a heavier dude. You know what I mean? And like, when you're a bigger dude like that, you really got to kind of watch. Like, my biggest gripe about Shaq is you would have been the greatest player the world has ever seen if you would have just stayed at the size you were when you were in Orlando. If he'd have put the work in and stayed at that Shaq, he'd have been the greatest player anybody's ever seen.
He would have 6 or 7 championships for sure as that player. So I'm with you on that. And so we have to see it to believe it. That's how it goes, because there's been too many. Greg Odom's a great example. Now that's obviously injury, and it's all injury. Even Zion, who's played a little bit of it's injuries. At the end of the day, can he stay healthy? And the only thing I will say, when you look at his frame and how he's built, it's a little bit. I mean, he's gonna have to beef up a little bit. He is gonna have to I mean, you just don't see, because we talk about players like
When
Bull.
Kevin Durant looks jacked next to you, there's a problem.
Exactly. No. Well, and we talk about players that have the height, like Bull. You know, a player like that. He's built, and he's not. I mean, you've got to put that weight on. You've got to get a little bit bigger, and that's a great example. I mean, yeah, if Kevin Durant looks jacked next to you, that's a problem. So he's got to put it on. But this is what I will say: if he comes to the league and it translates like it could, and they pick up a couple pieces and they build around, then they absolutely could be a dynasty, or at least start going in that direction. I will say this though: they've been a pretty awful team the last few seasons. So even with him, I don't have them being higher than a 11th or 12th seed this season. I don't think they'll go above that. Maybe they'll get into the play-in with a 10th seed, but I don't think they'll go above 11th or 12th, even with him.
Any chance they trade that for a huge haul if they get offered?
That's a great man. That would shake everything up. That would shake the NBA world up by far. I don't think that's going to happen because.
Okay, let me throw a weird, never going to happen scenario at you, okay?
Yeah.
So the talk in Wisconsin is everybody is super afraid that after next year, Giannis walks. I don't know if he will. He seems like the type of guy who wants to stay. But let's say the Bucks have any inkling that they're going to lose Giannis, and you call up the Spurs, and you're like, "I'll give you Giannis for that first round, that first overall pick." If you're the Spurs, do you do that? And you can mix and match and play all the NBA. I feel better because I threw other shit in there.
Yeah,
Game.
no.
But like,
That's a tough one. I think if anything, I'm going against that because of the other side. I don't think that the Bucks would gamble that
no,
much.
I'm saying
Maybe
if you're the Spurs, do you do it?
see that's the thing. If you're the Spurs, I that's a tough one. It's tough because
I'm
that's a
taking
great
talent.
question.
I'm taking a proven thing over a prospect any day, but I get that's not how the world of sports always works.
I think because of the special ties that he already has to the organization, I don't think they would take Giannis. I do think they would stick to their guns. Like I was on the other side of it, if the I see it not happening more in the sense of the Bucks not being interested in doing that. But I also think that would be one of the more realistic deals that would happen for that pick. And I do think maybe it would. I feel like the Spurs know the path they want to go. They've been on it before, and I think that's what they want to do, and that's what they want to
Yeah,
go for. So I
they're
do
an
think they would.
organization that makes a plan and they stick to the plan.
Yeah, I don't think they would go for it if they were offered it. I really don't. I know, like me personally, I'm taking the proven thing as well. But I will say, I think they've got a plan and they've got an idea of what they want, and it includes that number one draft pick. So I think that they wouldn't do that. I don't think they would listen to anything. I don't think they'd listen because if they wouldn't listen to Giannis, they wouldn't listen to anything. Because if anything, Giannis is one of, if not the best player in the league
And
overall, pound for pound.
and he's younger than a lot of the other guys you would bring up their names. Do you know that's a
Exactly.
thing too? But any player who gets drafted to San Antonio, just embrace that city. It's an amazing city. I lived there for a year and a half when I was 18. The Riverwalk's amazing. The Alamo and it's a whole different type of Texas. Like it's a real friendly, like neighborly part like of Texas for the most part. And whoever gets to live there is going to enjoy themselves. All
Absolutely.
right, man. Well, before we get out of here, everybody hit the like, subscribe, check out all the other shows. But Montana, why don't you tell them what else you got going on and where they can find it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a couple other shows going on. I've got Purple and Gold Zone, which is a Lakers show. I've not done a new episode since we got bounced. I keep planning to do one and then not doing one, but there will be a new Purple and Gold Zone this week. You can find Purple and Gold Zone on YouTube, or also you can find it on Spotify. And then another show I have is called The Connor and Heffernan Show, where we talk all things sports, a bunch of different motorsports, MMA, MLB, NHL. We talk about a little bit of everything. We just had a new episode last week. You can find that. And then the next one will be within the next few weeks. You can find us on YouTube at Connor and Heffernan Show, or also Spotify. Make sure to hit that YouTube Connor and Heffernan Show channel with a subscription. We're trying to gain a little traction there.
All right, and you guys will have a real nice conversation coming up on your next show because the NHL finals have been fire so far.
Oh yeah, absolutely, plenty to talk about there.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. One world, one love. Deuces.